All right. Okay, so we're going to get started. Again, my name is Tia Stillman. I'm from VSAC. Just a reminder to everyone, you are in the hospitality and tourism breakout room. And I'm going to go ahead and let our career presenter introduce herself by stating her name, her title, and where she works. You can go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Abby. Abby Crossen. The work that I do is in event planning. I work for a consulting company called Sound Planning, which means they set me up with jobs with other companies. Right now, it's a little slow because of COVID, and that has impacted lots and lots of industries. But I do work with a few companies like Brooks Running Shoes right now is a company that I'm working with and have worked with in the past. Anyway, I'm calling from Seattle, so it's a little bit early here. The sun's not quite out. And I do just give you a heads up. I have a 7-year-old who's got school that starts in 20 minutes, who's across the room from me. So if you hear an alarm or someone asking a question, he should be self-sufficient, but he might chime in. So anyway, it's great to meet you all this morning, and I'd love to answer any questions you have.
Great. So I do have some questions we can go off, but what I wanted to do is start with asking the students if they wanted to start with any questions. I think the idea is to have students ask the questions in the chat. If you want to go ahead and do that. Also, or rather, okay, let's see. So I'm not seeing anyone or anything in the chat. What I see when I click on the chat is actually that, the chat from the
whole chat. So it might be
that. So that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking, because I'm wondering if it's not the right chat. So so everyone, if you wanted to go ahead and ask a question, I'm going to, let's see. How do I do this?
Unmute. You want me to unmute people?
Yeah, I'm trying to, but it's not letting me. Ask all to unmute, maybe that. Were you able to do that?
I wasn't. I think maybe they can unmute themselves.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Maybe there's 3 people.
Yes.
No, they unmuted me.
So Leah. Okay, so we have Leah, Katie, and Abby. So if any of you guys,
I'm Abby, but I think there might be 2 people in one. No, you're good. You're good. I think there might be 2 people in one of the video rooms.
I did notice that.
So we might have everybody.
I did notice that. If you students want to ask any questions, you can feel free to.
So what are you guys' jobs?
You say, what jobs do we have?
Yeah.
So event planners and people in the hospitality industry work in a lot of areas. I think like starting out in event planning, or in hospitality, you'd probably find yourself working for someplace like a hotel or a convention center, someplace where you could kind of work under some mentors who would teach you about the event world. I took a kind of unusual path to event planning. I started working in university administration for many years and got good at logistics, like how we put things together, how we plan events, and then was able to work with a consulting company to find jobs. So the jobs I do are like huge 10,000 person conventions. I manage the food and beverage for them. So that means I work with the client, who could be someone like Microsoft or Apple Computers or lots of different people, who have huge conferences for their, let's say they have them for their staff, or they might have them for their, like people who buy stuff from them. So they're buyers. So they have big conferences in places like Seattle or Vegas or Orlando. And what I do is I spend about a year working with them to have tastings and figure out what 10,000 people are going to eat over 7 days for 3 meals. That includes the staff and the attendees. And we have a fixed budget. Might be we have $100 a person for the week or whatever that looks like. It's more than that, generally a lot more than that, but that's what I do. But I have friends in the event planning world who've run hotels, who've worked in the sales offices for hotels, setting up different sales stuff. There's people who work in food and beverage and, actually make the food in the hospitality industry. There's people who do customer service. There's a lot of things. I think you can go a lot of directions in the hospitality industry. At this moment in time, the hospitality industry is a little bit slow, but when it's running on all cylinders, it's a huge, enormous industry in this country, and can really take you to many.
Oh, God, it's my computer, so it probably won't.
What else? Any other questions? Does that start to answer that question?
Sounds like you do a lot.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but you mean the jobs I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's actually really fun because I get to work with like the people in charge of the event. So I get to talk with them and figure out what makes them happy. And we get to have tastings where we, the chefs at the convention center put out every single meal we might serve on tables. And we go in as a group and we taste all the food and we take notes and we give them feedback. We get to go to the event and work at the event and, meet the clients. Yeah, it's hard work, but I'd say it's really fun. And the kind of work I do is fun because when it's over, it's over. Like on the day the conference ends, I might have to write up some notes about things we could do better for next year, but I get this huge satisfaction of like, we accomplished that. Or say a wedding planner, right? Or a party planner. When the party's over, they get this moment of like, intense satisfaction that they've done something, and they get to see the customer. Like a lot of work that people do in the world, they do it, but the customer's far away from them. They don't ever get to meet them. But in the event planning world, they're usually kind of right in front of you. So you get to know people. So it's a lot of work, but I think most jobs are a lot of work. It just depends on how you want to do that work.
Good.
What else?
Yeah, any other questions, you guys? Oops. Sorry, could you repeat that
He
question?
asked, what were you drinking?
Oh, tea. I'm getting my caffeine in. It's only,
Oh my God, I love tea so much.
it's only 8:15 in the morning here. So
Wait, where are you?
I'm in Seattle. So it's
Oh,
I'm still waking up. So sorry, I'm drinking my very large cup of tea.
I have a huge one as well.
But this is kind of perfect for this this session because event planners work like different hours than other jobs. So when I'm just doing like the setup for an event, I work normal hours, like 8 to 5, just like most people go to work. But when an event is going on, like for a week in Seattle, I do an event in downtown Seattle. And during that week, I move into a hotel in downtown Seattle. Like I leave my family for the week. I stay in a hotel. The company pays for the hotel. And I sometimes get to the site. My colleagues and I split up the time, but some days I'm there at I work like 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. so that I can cover the early stuff. And so it's just a unique job in that you get these moments where you get to do some fun stuff, but you also get to stay in a hotel and, have a little vacation while you're working. So anyway.
so Tia, where are you from?
So I work with VSAC, so I'm just kind of the moderator here to keep things flowing. But yeah, I'm with VSAC and I am in the Gear Up program. I work for the Gear Up program with students in Fairhaven, the schools around there.
So you live in Vermont?
I don't. I actually live in New York and I commute to Vermont for work.
Yeah. But I come to Vermont every summer because my husband is from Vermont and we come to Norwich every summer and we'll probably live there someday. So I know a little bit about Vermont.
Nice.
That's
So we
awesome.
come and visit family.
Nice. And you all are from Danville, right? The students?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought I saw that.
Are there any jobs you guys are interested in that you'd like to know, like things that you're thinking about doing in this field? So we could see if I could answer those questions.
Not really in this field.
What are you thinking of doing?
Bartending.
Say that again.
Bartending.
Oh, bartending?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I want to be a baker when I'm older.
Oh, nice. Well, the same skills you use for banking, you use for event planning, a lot of spreadsheets and organization and bartending. A lot of people have long professional lives doing that, and
Our
it's
mics are
definitely
on.
part of the hospitality industry.
Our mics are on.
So
If you guys can mute when you're not asking questions, because we hear a lot of background noise.
yeah, some of that may be mine.
Oh, right. I
A little
forgot
bit
you
might
did.
be a child sight reading.
I forgot about that. I do have some questions I can throw out too that were on the list.
Yeah.
So Abby, when you were in middle school, what did you think you would want to do for a career?
So when I was in middle school, I wanted to be an architect, and I did go to college to be an architect. So I went to the University of Cincinnati and have a degree in architecture and a degree in interior design. And so that's what I did first. So when I was in middle school, I definitely wanted to be an architect, and that's what I pursued. But then I learned lots of fun skills and did other things as I moved through my professional life, and have worked as a catering manager, and have worked as a university administrator, worked as a nanny for a little while. And now I do a mix of event planning and just kind of administrative support for people I know in the field in the nonprofit world. So I think you can think you want to be something in middle school, do all the training to learn to do that. And you can either do the thing you thought you wanted to do, or you can end up using that training to do something else. For me, the creativity and some of the skills I learned in architecture school, I apply to all the things I've done in my professional life.
Follow up to that question, just because you just use the word creativity, is what are some examples of how you use creativity in your work?
I think I muted me. How do I use creativity? I do a lot of sketches for clients to show them like centerpieces or other things that I might want to try out. So I actually use drawing skills. Not everybody I work with does that, but it's something I can do, so I use it. If you watched my video, you probably saw some sketches that I've done to show people ideas. I think I use creativity to think about space for events and how to make the space really interesting. Like if you were working in bartending or food service and you had a really great sense of space, you could use that to help the person who owns the restaurant to do interesting things with the space and make it better for customers. So those are the ways I use creativity. I maybe use creativity also in problem solving. So event planning has a lot of problem solving where you have to solve things in the moment and make people happy in the moment. So I use creativity in those times too.
Thank you. Let's see, before I go on with my list of questions, I'll just pause for a minute to see if any of the students have any other questions they want to throw out at the moment.
I don't think we have anything to add.
Okay, so I'll go on to another question then. How does your work make a difference in the community? And if you can speak to it at all, how can the next generation entering your workforce make a difference on the job?
So I think the way you can make a difference on the job, if you go into event planning or some kind of food service or honestly even banking, I think thinking about ways to be more environmentally friendly. The work I do in event planning has a huge climate footprint because it's food service. So it's a ton of product and a ton of serving utensils and things like that that in events where there's 10,000 people, they have to be disposable. So we do a ton of work to educate our attendees on how to throw things away properly, making very labeled trash stations and other things like that. And we work really hard to try to use sustainable products and to work with the venues to sort the trash so that it doesn't end up in the landfill. So in my case, there's some really actionable climate change things I can do. Also working with customers in event planning to not give out as much, we call it swag, but all the papers and brochures and things like that. So people don't leave with piles of trash that they just take home and throw away. So that's one thing we can do. In terms of, you asked about making a difference in the community. I think in terms of the community, I would say in most of my events, I'm working for corporate clients. So I'm not necessarily like changing their, the trajectory of their work, but I definitely think you can use event planning skills to support community organizations. In most jobs that you have, event planner or something else that you guys might be interested in, you can take all the skills you have or little pieces of the skills you have and bring them to things like volunteer positions. You can offer them up to organizations that you think might need support, like someday maybe your kid's school or the church that you go to, or a community center that you work with. If you're really good at organizing things, you guys might be really good at that now, and you could help get auction items or coordinate people or something like that. So I think most jobs have skills that communities need. Even today, as we look at people organizing people around voting and activism, there are a lot of people who have amazing event planning skills that are making those things happen in communities across the US, because they have to put a lot of pieces together and get people to the same place at the same time. So I think there's lots you can do for your community in every job, and event planning is no different.
I think it's really good industry to work in nowadays. You know what I mean?
It's what'd you say? Say that again. Sorry.
She said that she thinks it's a very good idea to work in that.
Oh,
category.
yeah. Cool. Sorry, my computer, it might be my internet today. Yeah, I think it's an interesting industry to work in, and there's a lot of jobs to be had. I would say when I talk about it, I'm talking about it in non-COVID times, because COVID has changed the way we all approach our jobs. There's no one left unimpacted in their jobs by the way COVID has changed things. But I think when COVID is not as much of an issue and we can move a little more freely, there's tons of stuff for event planners. And I think event planners have had to be really creative during COVID times. A lot of them have gone from doing in-person events to online events. And if you're creative and you're willing to shift in the times, there's always work in this area, because businesses even more than ever need to connect their employees because they're working from home. So they're always looking for event people or people who are skilled with bringing people together. Right now, I'm working on an online holiday party for a company, and we're working with a vendor who has an online platform like Zoom, where we can bring them to get all these 400 employees together with a DJ, and we're sending them out boxes of stuff they can open in their home and use at the party. So there's still work even with online. You just have to be willing to kind of shift the work you do. So
yeah, I think we've all had to shift our work in some capacity or another. Okay, another question. What are some examples of how you use critical thinking skills in your work?
How do I use critical thinking? Critical thinking. I've lost my critical thinking skills being at home the last couple of weeks, but I think I use critical thinking every day when I'm doing event planning, especially around trying to imagine what the client wants and think critically about the ways that I can make it work for their budget. Sorry, I have the 7-year-old wants to join me.
Okay.
Sorry,
My 7-year-old does the same thing. No worries.
Can we meet your child?
Sounds
like the students are willing to say
Hello.
hi to your 7-year-old
Oh,
if
yeah,
you want to ever come in.
He says, Walter says hi.
Hi.
His school starts now, and in Washington we're all online. So
is it all online?
Home with me online all day. So he starts his first class in a few minutes. So I think critical thinking, especially in events, you use it on site at events, or if you were a hotel manager, you use it in customer interactions to make those things smooth. So for example, when we're on site and we're dealing with 4,000 people or 7,000 people, we might have, this sounds a little bit silly, but how detailed we have to get, but we'll have snack stations set up in 7 locations across 3 buildings, and those 3 buildings are all run by different food service companies, but we need it to look consistent. So we have to think critically about how to make the options available at each place look cohesive, and also the pricing, because hotels charge more than convention centers. So it costs us more. So we can't necessarily offer the same things and meet our budget. And then also in the moment, we'll have, we won't have known that this event is going to get out at this time. It is going to be really popular. And so we'll have 1,000 people pour out into a space, and we may have only planned for food at that moment for 400 in that space. And we have to think on our feet and think critically about how we reposition supplies, like pulling them from other floors, which can mean directing somebody to do it. It can also in the moment mean grabbing baskets and moving them to another location. So it's very, I would say when you're at an event or you're working in a customer service position, your brain is on and your critical thinking skills are like supercharged all the time to make sure that that you get the customer what they want.
Great. Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. I have a couple more questions, but I'll pause again just to see if the students have come up with anything else while we've been chatting. Sounds like no. Okay, I'll throw out another question. Oh, Katie, do you have a question?
Leah had a question.
Okay, Leah, what's your question?
So do you guys think that you'll stay in this, like the job that you're working in the rest of your lives or until retirement?
Oh man, that's a good question. So I have had several jobs over the past few years. The work that I do in event planning changes because I do consulting work. So I actually have my own business that I set up, and I work for a company that connects me with interesting work. And so they let me know when there's work available. Right now, I'm doing some part-time work and have some, because of the changes in COVID stuff, I'm doing a little bit more administration, a little bit less event planning, kind of going back to some skills I have around working in universities. I also have a degree in elementary education, so I kind of merge those things and work in like student outreach and stuff at the university. So I think had this moment in history not come along and COVID not come along, my answer to that question would be I'm trying really hard to build a set of customers and clients in the event planning world that trust me and like the work that I do so that I can keep doing it, because it has a huge amount of flexibility. I can kind of live anywhere and do this work as long as I can show up for the event and be visible to the customer over the computer for meetings. It's really flexible work. So yeah, I would love to keep doing it in some capacity for a long time. But I also really love using similar skills and working in university settings. So I think I'll continue to do something that's administrative, logistics, event planning related, but it will be in lots of different places.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So I think you did actually touch on this before, but does your job allow for flexibility in work schedules or job duties?
My job's super flexible, except when the event is going on. So when the event is going on, it's very inflexible. Like I'm on site for, 8 to 10 days, just focused on the event. But when I'm not on the event, the job is very flexible. It's at least the job I do has a lot of flexibility because I just need to respond to the client. And I only have so many hours, like I might have 400 hours to do the work event, which sounds like a lot, but that's actually only 10 weeks of normal full-time work because most people work 40 hours a week. So it's only really 10 weeks of full-time work. So I spread that out over a long period of time. So there can be weeks where maybe I'm only working 3 hours that week on a job. I might have multiple jobs, so I'm working a lot, but I might also have a week where I only have a few hours. But that's unique to consulting. So if you're hearing a lot of 7-year-olds in the background, that's his school day starting. Sorry, I didn't get his headphones on. But yeah, I think there is flexibility, especially as you get farther along in the career. I think if you're working for a hotel or a restaurant, it's not a particularly flexible job. When I was a catering manager, I was working for a friend's restaurant in town, and I was managing catering coming out of 4 restaurant locations. We were doing about 3 or 4 catering jobs a day. And I was the only catering staff in terms of booking them, not making the food, but booking them and dealing with client interaction and delivering a lot of them, honestly. So that was not a particularly flexible job. So I think when I think about flexibility in work, I think you'll find out as you become, as you move into your professional life in 5 or 6 years, what kind of flexibility you want. And over time, you can think about ways to take your skill set and find more flexible versions. But I think often the first couple of years when you work doing anything, it's not that flexible. And then as you become more skilled and you're quicker at doing the job, you can start to build in more flexibility to your work life. Because most jobs, they need to get the task done. It doesn't mean you have, like a lot of desk jobs, you don't need to necessarily do 40 hours of intense work if all of the work that needs to be getting done is getting done. So that's what I think about flexibility.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, and I have one last question. It's a two-part question. What benefits beyond compensation does your organization offer? And then what benefits would interest young workers?
Oh man, benefits are interesting. So it kind of also depends on what state you're working in and what they're required to offer you. Washington is a pretty generous state in terms of like what businesses are required to offer. I work for myself right now, so the benefits I get are I have flexibility, but in most of the jobs I've had, the benefits have included, hopefully healthcare, hopefully some retirement, which sounds kind of boring right now, but when you're a little bit older and you realize that someday you want to not work at all, retirement's pretty cool. I also, most workplaces want to keep you interested and happy. So they have, holiday parties and other things. In my case, when I work with companies, they often, if we do a good job, they give us some kind of little like gift bag at the end, which depending on what the company is, could have, some fun things in it, but that's not necessarily going to happen, but it sometimes happens. I think, those are the benefits for the work I do. I also am able to charge my travel and other things, which is necessary for the job, but they cover my mileage, my toll fees, like any flights I need. I've done some work down in California, so they'll cover the flights for those events. And also sometimes they cover your technology. So giving you access to computers or cell phones that you need to do your work. But those resources like still belong to the company. So depending on who I'm working for and what kind of technology restrictions they have, sometimes I have to use one of their computers so that we keep all the stuff on the right side of security. I think you've asked about compensation. So compensation is really broad in this field. I make kind of at the mid to high end of it just because I also run a business, so I have to pay my own taxes. So when I get the money, I still owe a bunch of the money back to the government, which when you have a job like at VSAC or something like that, VSAC deals with more of the taxes for you. But Abby, I think
Abby, I don't mean to interrupt, but it does say beyond compensation, so don't feel like you have to share what your compensation.
But I'm just going to say, I think they were talking about, no, I'm not going to share what I make, but I think like you could expect to make, in most cases, unless you're like a server at a restaurant, and I don't know what Vermont's like food service compensation is. In Seattle, the minimum wage is $15 an hour, but I think you can expect to make between $20 and probably $25 an hour in the event planning world if you're in a in a kind of like a sales position or something like that. The other thing about the world that I work in event planning, there's often, and hospitalities, there's often commission or other things related to how many customers you can bring in, how happy they are, how many hotel rooms the place is selling, how many drinks are sold at a bar, how many meals are sold. So there is some, in addition to compensation, there's some commission, but I think it's a field that has a wide range of salary, and it depends on where you live, and can also include if you're going and working in this field in a remote place, like working for a cruise company or working for a hotel in a place where there's not a lot of housing. It's possible that you could find yourself in a position where some housing or other things are provided. So I think it just really depends on what you're doing and the companies you're working for and the value that brings to the company. And consulting is just a strange space because you're basically, somebody's paying your company. And so it changes the structure of how much you pay. So most of you will probably work in jobs where you're employed by another company. And so that will look a little different.
Great, thank you. All right, so that wraps up the questions that we provided. And so I'll pause before we wrap up to see if the students have any other questions before we're done.
Yeah.
Sorry, what did you say?
Oh, what was that, Katie?
We couldn't hear what you were saying.
Oh, I was just saying I'm done with my questions. So now if you all have any other questions you want to ask Abby, you can go ahead and do that now.
I think you kind of covered everything.
Yeah, thanks for asking such a great question. And good luck deciding what
I
you
have one
do.
question.
Yeah.
Do you prefer Seattle or Vermont?
Oh, I like them both. Seattle is, they're really different. They look really different. I moved here from Chicago, so I'm from like Chicago and Indiana. So I actually really love Vermont. Like I would be very happy to live there. It's like really beautiful. And I love living close to big cities, like being able to hop on a train and go down to New York City or other places. But they're both great. I think I wouldn't say I would tell you to move to Seattle. It's, I happened to get a job here years ago and they brought me out here. But there are a lot of great cities and Vermont's pretty great.
Cool. Do you have any pets?
Do I have any pets? I do. I have a cat named Jingle who I'm surprised hasn't actually joined us this morning.
What color is your cat?
I have a perfect Halloween cat that is a black cat.
Oh my God, I want one.
I'm glad I could share.
You have any pets, Tia?
Yeah, I have a Chihuahua who also has not joined us. But yeah, his name is Enzo. He's a little guy.
Nice. Thank you guys for all the questions and good luck as you figure out your pathways.
Yes, thank you all. You guys can go ahead and end.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys.
Have a good life.
Just be quiet.
All right. And thank you, Abby. Oh,
Yeah.
my Chihuahua.
Oh, there's
And thank you, Abby, for
nice to meet you.
you as well.
Yeah. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.